So for Z scores, basically, big fucking hint. If it says normally distributed, that means you're going into Z scores. You're going to use your mean, your standard deviation, all that type of stuff. Um, Sorry, hang on. I'm just making just. Yeah. No, this is working. I think. But yeah, if it says normally distributed in the question, that's a big hint. Look out for those words. If you see those words, it basically just means you're going to be doing Z scores. Now, the wonderful thing about Z scores is even if you don't really understand the true in depth of it, there's only like so many different scenarios you can get. I've drawn out like 4 here that I'm going to mess around with, as you can probably see. So there's 4 different scenarios. The idea is, though, don't forget, there's technically something on the course called the empirical rule. Also, I should point out, this is how I'm going to draw mu. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It just means the mean or the average. Sigma is going to be the standard deviation. Now, the thing about mu is the mean of the entire population of everybody. I'll try to come back to that a bit later if I can remember to do so. But what you need to remember is, for the empirical rule, technically we split it into like 3 little marks along the way, and it doesn't cover everything. It's not that it goes like here at the very end. It only goes like ever so slightly near the end. I should probably do those a bit heavier just in case you can't see them. I don't think about it. And they are the standard deviations. So if you want to go in this direction, you minus the standard deviation. So this would be mu minus a standard deviation. This would be mu minus 2 standard deviations. Oh, by the way, this is only, well, this empirical rule that I'm doing is technically for all of Leaving Cert, but all the Z score stuff that I intend to do here is generally going to be just for honors Leaving Cert, right? If you go to the right, you have to add on standard deviations, like so. So what I did was I looked up. These are to measure just different measurements for different like groups of people. You could do height, weight, shoe size. Exam results is one they very often use in the Leaving Cert. What I picked was the IQ scores. Now in Ireland, apparently, this was off some website, we were ranked number 35 in the world. Hooray! I don't know. I don't trust that though. I wouldn't go off of that. And our mean IQ was 95. And then some other shit website I found said that the standard deviation of your IQ would have been 15. So what that means is, apparently in Ireland, if we were to do it one of these for our IQ, right, and that's not fantastic shape of the graph, sure, we'll go with that. In the middle would be the 95, because that's the average. And then if I add on a standard deviation, 95 and 15 is 110. If I add on another one, it would be 125, and if I add on another one, it would be 140. If I go down this way, I just have to do the same, but minus them each time. So you notice 95 take away 15 is 80, 80 take away 15 is 65, and 65 take away 15 is 50. And the empirical rule, which is for, technically that's for ordinary and honors, as I was saying, shows that basically what we would say is 68% of the population has to fall in between these two numbers here. The first two, like one standard deviation either side of the average. If you go one this way and one this way, 68% of people are going to fall between that. So we could say 68% of people are going to fall between 80 and 110 if they got their IQ tested. I don't know again how true that is. Don't get too annoyed with any of the numbers. I'm not vouching for them. The 2 blue ones, if you went out 2 this way and 2 this way, we'd end up with 95%. So we'd say 95% of all Irish people would fall in between an IQ score of 65 and 125, apparently. Again, that doesn't seem right. Well, maybe it is, I don't know. And then I'll pick another color, just so we can see. I should probably pick a brighter one so you can actually see it, though. I don't know what's going to show up on the thing. But then if we went to here and here, that would be 99.7. And unfortunately, those are just numbers you technically have to remember. You technically just have to remember that plus or minus 1 standard deviation either side of the mean is 68%. Plus or minus 2 standard deviations is 95. And then 3 would be, oh fuck, I wrote the 3 there. 3 would be 99.7. Now again, that's something that's more so for ordinary level, but again, it's something they can put in the honors, so don't completely write it off. But if you're going to be like, look, I don't have time, I need to do the proper things, yeah, we're going to look at those now in a second. I just thought I'd get those out of the way, but that's how it works. And we'd say 99.7% of people in Ireland have an IQ score between 50 and 140. So for the Z scores though, the thing is, you'll notice that these are for very specific. If you're 1 standard deviations, 2 standard deviations, or 3 standard deviations away from the middle. In honors, you also have to be able to do any amount of standard deviations in any direction. Whoops. So you're gonna have to see if there's any, or yeah, so it could be 1, or it could be 1.2, or it could be 1.36 standard deviations. So that's what we're going to be looking at with the Z scores here. Again, 4 different scenarios. What you could get is you could get to the right of the average, a number bigger than the average, and they want to know what percentage is below that number. So they want to know what's the percentage odds that you would fall into this part of the category. It could be to the right hand side, and they could ask you what's bigger than that. It could be on the left hand side, and they ask you again what's smaller than that. Or it could be to the left hand side and ask you what is bigger than that. So basically they're saying, what are the odds you're, for the first one, it's what are the odds you're below a number that's above average. For the second one, it's what's the odds you're above a number that's above average. For the third one, it's what the odds you're below a number that's below the average. And for the fourth one, it's what the odds you're above a number that is below the average. So I guess I'll just try pick a number for each of these, and we'll just see how it goes. Every time we do this though, we're going to go to, these are 4 consecutive pages in your log tables, 34 to 37, if you can see that. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go to this guy on page 34, and he's going to be what we use. The whole thing that we have to do is we have to find out how many standard deviations you are away from the mean. So let's say, for example, they asked you, what are the odds that someone in Ireland will have an IQ score of 117, right? Because you notice 117 is like here. Oh, we know that's above the average, and we're saying what are the odds that someone will have an IQ score below that. Means that we want to find out what the odds are less than that. That lines up with that one, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to basically sort out that one. And what you would do is, we know that the number is 117, but we don't want the real number. We want how many standard deviations we have to add on to get to there. That number is your Z score though. That's what the Z score is. So we're going to figure out what the Z score is, and the way we do that is we find out how far away 117 is from the average. And if you think about it, it would be 117 minus 95, because 95 was the average in the middle, don't forget. That would be 22. So that is, we added on 22 to get from here to here. But how many standard deviations was that? Standard deviation was 15, so what we would do is we would divide that by 15. Now I'm going to have to do that in my calculator. I didn't set it up beforehand, I do apologize. But then we would divide that by 15, and we get it to be 1 point. Now it's going to be 1.46 with a dot on top. Be careful of the dots, because that comes up in your calculator like that, and I know the dot is hard to see, but that is really 1.46666, so on and so forth. But we're going to just round that to 1.47. So that is your Z score, right? Now I kind of hid this from you, but that's just what you would get from doing the formula of Z equals X minus mu over sigma, because all you would do is you would say X is the number in question, so it's 117, mu is the average of 95, and sigma is the 15. And if you do that on your calculator, you would get the same answer, right? So you can just do that. I just want to explain to you what we're actually doing with that formula in the process. A lot of people just know to do the formula because they're told to do it. They don't actually like know what's going on. They're just putting it in, and that's fine. You can do that in the exam. I'm just hoping that the way I did it originally just gives you a bit of an idea of what we're doing. So our Z score is what we get when we get out the end of the formula, and it's basically just telling us how many standard deviations away the 117 was. So we did on the bottom left, we did for 1, 2, and 3. Now we have also considered a situation where we've added on 1.47 sigmas. That's what we've just done there. That's what we're saying. So what that means is now we go to our wonderful grids, and we have to go down. this is something I want to highlight. We have to go to the z-scores, which are in the blue. So the z-scores would be in the blue, same with over here. And then we're going to find the percentage that is in the red part, right? Now, that's in this question. Sometimes they'll ask us to look back at it in a backwards kind of manner, right? So just realize the blue bit that I've highlighted is the z-scores, the red bit that I drew in and I've gotten rid of already, but the red bit is the percentage, right? So because we found a z-score of 1.47, we need to just scroll down here till we find 1.4. It's not there. We go down here. Oh, there's 1.4. Now we need to have a 7 at the end, so we're just going to scroll all the way to here. And basically, we're going to pick this number then because it matches where the 1.4 and the 0.07 match up. So, what we can do is we can say, oh, well, the z-score of 1.47 is the same as a percentage of 0.9292. Now, again, I called it a percentage even though that's a weird decimal. Don't forget, in maths, we wouldn't use... we wouldn't really use these when we're doing maths, these numbers here for a percentage. We use the decimal version. So if you want to make it a percentage, just multiply it by 100. In the maths exam, unless it specifically says one of the two, like if it says give the percentage, then obviously give this version of it, but it doesn't actually matter. Technically speaking, mathematically, it's better to use this one. But again, your calculators are getting better and better, and you can actually use the percent button in a lot of different places. But the answer to this question is the odds that you find someone in Ireland that has an IQ score less than 117 is 92.92%. Wow. Now, I'm going to go over here and just cheekily say, well, imagine the question had been, what are the odds that you find someone in Ireland that's above an IQ score of 117? Now, I know we've done all the maths already. I'm just doing that to save time. But technically, you'd have to pretend like you're coming at this from scratch completely, and you'd have to do the, oh well, z is equal to x minus mu over sigma, and then you'd have to do the, oh well, that's 117 minus the 95 over the 15. Oh, that's 1.47. Oh, that's the same as a percentage of 0.9292. Like all that we've done so far, but the 0.9292, as we found out, covers this part. So in order to get the red bit, don't forget that for this graph, it all adds up to 100. So this bit and this bit has to add together to be 100%. But again, in maths, we would just say that's 1. So in order to find out what the red bit is, what we're going to do is we're going to do 1 minus the bit we don't care for. 1 minus 9292. That would give us 0.0708, I think, maybe. Which, if you put that into percentage, would be 7.08%. I forgot the 8. Of course I did. Of course. So, you notice that one is piss easy if you can do the first one. You just have to remember it. And I find it's very handy sometimes in the exam when you see the question, because the question can be a bit of a shit one with the wording. Draw out the graph. Try draw out the graph that they have kind of insinuated in the question, and just see which of these four kind of lines up with, and then you can kind of play around with it until you kind of figure out what's going on. Yeah, like that's the first two scenarios. So if you're to the right, if you're above average, this is what you would do. Now we're going to do the same for if you were below average, right? So imagine I said to you, what about if you had an IQ score of 88. We go with 88. I used 7 already. I didn't enjoy using a 7 again. So we're going to say 88. That is definitely below the average of 95. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the formula again. We're going to say z is equal to x minus mu over sigma. That's going to be 88 minus 95 over 15. Now you'll notice, because on the top it's going to be a number smaller than the average, take away the average. The answer will be a minus. And that's what we have to take into account, that we're going to end up with a minus 7 on the top, and we're going to divide it by 15, and the decimal we get is 0.46 with a dot on top again, which when you do all the shenanigans I did with the decimal earlier, we become minus 0.47, right? So up here I said it's where you go up 1.47. This, it's just a coincidence, like a 47 again. Don't read into that too much. But basically what we did was we minused 0.47 sigmas this time because we went to the left, and that's why it's a minus number. Now, this is the controversial part, because you notice in your grid you have no minus z-scores at all whatsoever. I've done maths with college students, and I know people who work in the field of this type of stuff. They actually do have another grid that has the minus ones, but in Leaving Cert Maths, it's kind of like they're trying to test to see if you can have the logic and understanding to figure this shit out. But basically, what will happen is the graph is symmetrical. The right-hand side and the left-hand side are symmetrical. So, if they ask you to find out this bit here, what we're actually going to do is find out the white bit and just going to be like they're the same. They'll be fine. So that's what we're going to do. So because this was a z-score of minus 0.47, what we're really going to do is we're going to do this, but then like flip it around, so that instead we're actually going to do this part and have it for plus 0.47 as the amount of standard deviations we added on. And we're going to just say that's the same thing, right? Because it's symmetrical, the left-hand side and the right-hand side, red bit that I've drawn here and here. These two should match percentage-wise. Just one will have a positive and one will have a negative standard deviation. And because there was no minus 0.47, I have to do this, and we're going to look for positive 0.47. So I'm going to scroll down here till I get to 0.4. Happy days. Go across to 0.7. Coolaboola. And we get this guy, 6808. So that means in here is 0.6808, but that means in here is also 0.6808. That's how that works. That is how that works. Now, again, you can change that to 68.08%. Just to, again, I left out the 8. I don't know what that must be a thing with me, I guess. Hopefully, is are okay with that. Hopefully, you can see that basically this third one is like a reverse of the one that I did over here in a weird way. Oh yeah, no, I fucked it up. I knew I was forgetting something. Okay, don't make this mistake. That bit's not the 0.68, of course. So look, we'll pretend my mistake was me explaining it. So don't forget this grid, the 0.6808 only tells you what's to the left, right? So I reversed it. Okay, I'll talk about it because I fucked it up. I reversed it around to try find this guy, but don't forget that the graph only works in from the log tables where it tells you what's to the left of a number that's to the right of the middle, right, to the right of the average. So this part is 0.6808. I kind of knew I'd forgotten to say something, I just didn't know what it was. Obviously it's a very important part, but that bit is the 0.6808. Hopefully that hasn't thrown a lot of yous, because the graph here in the log tables only tells you what's to the left. So when I said 0.47, it told me what percentage would be to the left of 0.47. And because we wanted to get to the right, we now have to do the 1 minus thing. So I was right when I said it's this thing basically, but I just forgot to do one of those steps for some reason. So if this part is 0.6808, and we know the whole thing again has to add up to 1, you do 1 minus 0.6808 and you get 3,192, I think. 3,192. I think so. I'm sorry I goofed it. But I guess use that to remember it, I guess. I don't know. Oh, you'll be in your exam, be like, oh, Graham fucked this up. I better not fuck this up myself. But yeah, so again, we wanted this little red bit. We can't do that because the graph in the log tables only accounts for any number to the right of the average. So what we did was we flipped it. We wanted to find the red bit here, but again, the graph in the log tables only tells us this blue bit. So we have to do 1 minus the 0.6808 to get the 0.3192. And the 0.3192 is the final answer for this red bit because it's the same as this red bit. Yeah. So to the left of the average, you want to the left of it. We can't do it because you get a minus z score. If you get a minus z score, you flip it around to do for the positive z score. But as you saw, even myself, I fucked it up. That the graph only tells you what's to the left. 1 minus will fix that for you. So again, in a similar way though, imagine it was 88 again, and this time I'm asking what percentage of Irish people would be above an IQ score of 88. Well, basically again it's minus 0.47 standard deviations, right? So our z score is minus 0.47. And I've gotten that by doing all this maths out again. The formula of Z, I suppose I should write that out just so you know where I got it from. But again, this one is going to be flipped around once more. Yes, finally. So this one is asking us for the odds that you're above 88, which is kind of saying what's the odds you are above the 0. Or the minus 0.47 Z score. Again, we can't do that because it's to the left of the average, and our graph doesn't work like that. Again, they do exist, people do have them. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, that would be the same as 0.47, but this way instead. And what we would do is we'd go to our 0.47 on the grid, and we'd say, oh, 0.47 is 0.6808. Again, we know that because we've just done it, but imagining you hadn't done it already, you would say, oh, this is 0.6808. And then you would say, well, that's just the same as this, so this is also 0.6808, and that's your answer. That would be the answer to that. You would say 68.08% of Irish people have an IQ above 88. Yeah, those are the 4 scenarios. Again, I scuffed the third one up. Hopefully you guys can read between the lines and figure out what's going on and actually know what it's doing. Hopefully, time wise, I don't have enough time to go back and just edit everything. I know it might annoy us, but yeah, there is one other way. Well, there's a couple other things to do with this, but for basics, that would be the first way around. If you recall, over here I have this formula here that I've still circled, and I have do you remember I put in the blue bits and I put in the red bits, right? So when we were doing the question before, we used the formula to figure out a Z score that we located in this blue bit. Then we found the corresponding percentage that goes with it. What they can do instead of giving you, we saw an example here where they gave us, in this formula, they gave us all 3 of these numbers. We filled them in, we threw it in the calculator, we got an answer for Z. Happy days. Sometimes what they can do is, in the question, just to annoy you, they can say to you, oh, what IQ score do you have to get so that 20% of Irish people are above that IQ score? So instead what they've done is they've given you a percentage instead of an actual IQ score to go off of. So you have to go in reverse. You're not trying to find the percentage as an answer, you're given the percentage as the start, and you have to find the other number as the answer. So when you're given the percentage, you don't start with the Z score, you start in this part. Now I won't do 20% to start off with because that's gross. Imagine it said to you, what IQ score would you have to go to that would account for the bottom 80% of everybody in Ireland, IQ score wise? So if I said to you, basically, what IQ score would you have to be like above 80% of everybody else? What you would do is you'd have to look through this bit that I've circled in the red to find a number that's close to 80%, keeping in mind that 80% is a decimal. It'd be 0.8000 if you want to treat it like that to be in line with what it looks like. And what you'd have to do is literally go through all these numbers till you find one that's close to 0.80000. Everybody gets drawn to this one because they're like, that's the closest one, but technically it's this one because that one's technically closer to 0.8. So I'm going to get rid of all these. Hopefully you're okay with that. It's just starting to piss me off. And we go kind of backwards. We would say, oh wow, there you go, wow. So we'd say 80% would be the same as a Z score of 0.84. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to actually fill in this number, this number, and this number, and we'll find the X that should have gone here that would have given us the bottom 80% of people in Ireland. So what I would do is I would say 0.84, because that's our Z score, that's what the grid told us, is equal to X. We don't know what X is. Mu is still 95, sigma still, what was it, 15? Yeah, I think it was 15. And now it becomes algebra to find out what X is, to solve for X. So multiply both sides by 15 to get rid of the 15 on the denominator there. And what's that going to be? It's going to be 8.4. 8.4 and 4.2. 12.6, I think, is equal to X. I might have gotten the numbers wrong there. Don't dwell on it too much. I'm just kind of in a rush for time wise. Then you bring the 95 over, make it a plus. We'd end up with 12.6 plus the 95 is equal to x. And then we would add them together and we get 107.6 is what x is. So what we're saying there is you'd have to go to a z-score of 107.6 to accommodate the bottom 80% of all Irish people, which kind of looks like it would be right, because like if you think about it, 107 or something, it would be like there. I know the line is wonky, it's pissing me off too. And that does look like it accounts for, yeah, was that 107.6? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yep. Yes. No, I've done. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So that would be we would be saying that you'd have to go to an IQ score of 107.6 before you could accommodate the bottom 80% of people. Now, it's the exact same, just with other numbers. I skipped out on the 20% earlier because for a reason. Imagine I had said to you, what if I want to know about the bottom 30% of people? You notice on the graph that would look like this though, and that's not accommodated here because this only accommodates to the right hand side. That only accommodates positive z scores, as you notice. There's no minuses on the z scores, so we need to have a -1 here. So what we do is instead, what we do is instead we do it like this, and we say what would be the top 30%. Again, that's not accommodated either, so the top 30% is like the bottom 70%. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to say, well, what would be the z-score for the bottom 70%? And again, we're going to have to look through the grid to find out what number is close to 0.7000. And I would say this one. So this would be our z-score like so. And we'd say, our z-score here would be 0.52. Now that would give us the lowest 70% of people or the highest 30% of people. But because we're going to mirror images to get the lowest 30% of people, we just have to do minus 0.52. So our z-score has to be a minus because it's on the left. Don't forget that, right? So because it's to the left, it has to be a minus. And then we're just going to do this formula again. But obviously we have a different z-score. It's a different question. It's still going to be x minus mu is the 95 again over to 15. Hopefully you can see what I was doing there. Multiply both sides by 15. You get 52 and 2.6, 7.8, I think. Again, those numbers might be scuffed. I wouldn't worry about that part. You guys will have your calculator and your brains, hopefully, in your exam. And then we would say this would have to be 87.2 maybe. Right, but then what we'd be saying is if you want to get to the lowest 30% of people in Ireland, you'd have to go to an IQ score of 87.2, which would be here somewhere. And that kind of looks again about right, that this would accommodate the bottom 30% of the population. Yeah, that's the main bit of the question. I will say there is another situation up here where you'll notice this formula it's the exact same except there's a root n on the bottom. And that is basically when instead of comparing an individual, they're comparing a small group. So imagine like they weighed all the kids in your 6th year in your school. And they were trying to find out if you were all just fat bastards or something for some reason, right? So what they would do is they would say, well, the average for all the kids in Ireland, I'm going to pick a ridiculous number just so people aren't going to be like, oh, I don't weigh that much. 735 kilos, right? There, no one's going to get a fucking complex now. 735 kilos is the average of all the kids in Ireland. But let's say they do your school and I find out the average for your school is 1,000, right? Now x bar is what we use for the the average of a small group of people. Mu is what we use for the average of everybody in that group. So that's all 6th years would be here. But like, you know, Ratoath College would be like just x bar. If the average of Ratoath College was that, then we'd call that x bar instead. And let's say the standard deviation is I don't know, 150. Again, I'm making obscure numbers, so the maths is going to be weird, right? And let's say the amount of kids that they in 6th year are 160. I don't know. So basically, if they were to try to compare your class to the average, this is what they would do. They'd find the Z score. Um, I've kind of made it a bit of a weird scenario, but basically what you would do is when you're filling this formula, I want to get across that basically the average of the school goes in place of the individual person. Beforehand, we were saying what are the odds that a single person has an IQ score of 30% or of 120, whatever. Now it's what's the average of the group. That's what goes in there instead. Mu is still the average of all the motherfuckers. Sigma is still sigma. That's not going to change. Root n is going to be root 160 because there's 160 students potentially asked. Now you need to be careful when you put that in. When you're typing that in on the calculator, do not just press fraction button, because what you end up with, if you keep hammering the fraction button, you just end up with this, which is actually wrong. You need to press the fraction button, go down, like literally press the down arrow key to here, and then press the fraction button again to get that. You would type that in, and then you would get a Z score for that. So that should be fun. I'm not doing it, but it's you'd get a number here that would be your Z score, and then you could find out where you place in where your school. You could be like miles over here, like in the problematic zone, you know, or over here in the problematic zone. Oh, yeah, well, you know. So that's kind of what that would be for. It's just a different version. If there's a group of things, they can use that, but they can use trickery with that. Sometimes they put in a group even though they don't actually want you to use that formula. There was one with cars where they said there was 800 cars, and they said what are the odds that any one car on this road will be going faster than whatever. And I think for that one, the trick was that the 800 cars actually represented all the 60, so it was actually the mu in that example, and it was just the normal one that was down here, right, the normal Z, and not this one. So they can pull some trickery, some shenanigans, but this was just to kind of get you with the basics. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll tie this in with statistics, because this can tie in with the 95% confidence interval, and hypothesis testing, because they might say find the Z score, is it in our confidence interval? And what that means is, if you remember from the statistics from the confidence interval, the 95% confidence interval ties in with the Z score of 1.96 and minus 1.96. So for example, if we got a number like 2.35 when you did this, that's bigger than 1.96. Like that wouldn't fit in the minus 1.96 to plus 1.96 kind of category of Z scores. That, and in Leaving Cert Maths, we would consider those numbers to basically be they're close enough. If you get a number in between minus 1.96 and 1.96, sorry, you can say that the two original numbers of 735 and 1000 were actually, they look weird, but they're actually fine. They're actually close enough that it's just coincidence. If it's a number like 2.35, which is outside of it, we can be like, that means the number is far enough away that something is different. Yeah, so it's a significant number. It's not just like oh, that can happen to people. It's oh shit, something has gone down. Like there's something in the food, or there's something in the water over in Rototh area. But yeah, that's the basics of Z scores, as far as I can think. Like very basic. Maybe I'm missing something, but as far as I'm aware, that covers everything I was gonna try cover, and it might be a decent starting point if I am forgetting stuff. Obviously, the questions will be they'll try their hardest to trick you, but here it all breaks down to this basically. All right.